Welcome to the Braver Leaders podcast, the space where bold conversations meet real leadership. I'm Sam Harvey, founder of Braver Leaders, and I spend my days helping leaders and teams cut through the noise and focus on what actually matters: behavior change. On this podcast, I bring you unfiltered conversations with experts who are driving real change: executives, entrepreneurs, professors, coaches, and culture shakers. We dive into the human side of leadership, the stuff that truly makes a difference. High performance teams, culture shifts, tough conversations, vulnerability, and impact. We're getting stuck in. If that's your thing, hit subscribe, share this with a fellow leader, and check out braverleaders.com for our free resources, because leadership is not a solo sport. Let's do this. Welcome to the Braver Leaders podcast. I am your host, Sam Harvey, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dr. Veronique Richard, who is a researcher and lecturer at the University of Queensland. Hello, Vero. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. What about you?
Yeah, very, very good. Thank you. We're just chatting off air about how things are going for you and avoiding hurricanes and all sorts of things. But in general, you sound pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. The storm has passed and everything's fine.
Nice. As we said, I'm probably going to do a really bad job of introducing you. Could you do a little better for us?
Yeah. Well, you said probably the most important thing. I'm working here at the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia, both as a lecturer in sports psychology, performance psychology, and as a researcher. And in my research, I looked a lot at the role of creativity in developing high performance skill, whether it is mental skills, social skills. We also look at the impact of the performing arts on health and well-being and creativity. So I like to think that I lie between many domains, the performing arts, sport, high performance in different thing. Had a email last week to do the approach in medicine. So yeah, a little bit of everything, but always around mental skills, creativity, and designing environment. How do we actually make these things happen in, yeah, daily environment?
Love that, love that. And I think I'm really keen today to talk to you a lot about how we can bring creativity into leadership. And I think, as we kind of touched on before we started recording, we spend a lot of time talking about, well, how can we fix things? So how do we be less stressed? How do we look out for attachment styles in the workplace? What do we do with paradoxical leadership, with which we've chatted about with your colleague John? But I'm excited about this because it feels to me, looking at it from another angle of, well, how do we actually bring more creativity, more play, more fun into our world so that we can actually create I guess space and kind of a little set the kind of canvas as leaders. How does that land with you?
Absolutely. One of my favorite definition, if we have to define what creativity is, and I know that a lot of my artist friend would hate for me to have to define it, but I think actually one of my great colleagues, Vlad Glavenue, defined it as a process of exploring and expanding possibilities for
Interesting.
self, others, groups, and society. So to go back to your having fun, expanding, like creating is about, it's not about fixing actually, because when you're creating, you're often don't even know what you're searching for,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Because if you would know, then you would not necessarily be creating. But yeah, when you engage in creative processes, and it doesn't have to be these big eminent creation, right? It could be a daily life thing where you
mm,
just explore and expand your capacity. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The work we do is absolutely not in the fixing. It's absolutely in the looking into the future, expanding, and just like exploring these fantastic possibilities that sometimes we may not see if we don't take the time
mm.
to explore those.
And how did you get to this? Because you said before it kind of just fell on your head.
I said
I'm
that
sure I'm
offline.
sure
You
there
were not
was.
supposed to say it online.
Sorry, too late now.
Yes,
So
good.
yeah, how did you kind of come upon this journey?
Well, I will try to make a very, very long story short. I was a figure skater, so that was
Ah,
my athletic background.
cool.
And I did an undergrad in physical education. In year three, I was like, that won't be the end for me. I need to do more studies. And I started coaching figure skating at the same time. And then I
Interesting.
found this sports psychology program, loved it, fell in love. At the end of my master program in sports psychology, the mental performance consultant at Cirque du Soleil, um, we did a visit. So Cirque du Soleil, I mean, I'm French Canadian. I'm pretty sure everyone that is listening has picked this up. And so Cirque du Soleil headquarters is in Montreal, Canada. And I visited, and then mental performance guy there, I asked him at the end, can I do an internship? And he was like, yeah, sure. Do you want to come and do a summer internship? And then I discovered the Cirque du Soleil way. And I was lucky I
Interesting.
could, like, yes, it was a mental performance internship, but I was allowed to go see everything that was happening between these walls. And that was back in 2011. And there was a specific program at the time that was bringing athletes to become artists. And for me, that was the beginning of that journey where they were like, you were talking about play, you were talking about fun. To
Mm,
take an athlete that has been trained in sometimes very
mm,
rigid, regimented kind of environment, and now he will be a character. He needs to express emotion. So they were putting them through so many interesting movement activities, creative activities, and I could only see not only the artistic benefit of doing this, but the psychological and social benefit of doing this. Like it was
interesting.
a group of maybe 20, 25 former athletes that were coming from all over the world, literally not even speaking the same language. And they were put in one group, but through those movement experiences, languages did not matter anymore.
Yeah.
How if you were an Olympian or a like average gymnast, whatever it is, you were all considered the same and all trying to find your way through this artistry. And I was not supposed to do a PhD. I'm sure you know a little bit about that. But
Whoops.
um, I just happened to be, I just became super curious about
Mm,
what do we know about these activities and like embodied creativity and all these things, and started a PhD on, to be honest, not sure at the beginning I knew what it was about really, but I knew I wanted to
I
do it
definitely relate to
on
that.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
so then I asked two of the prof of Cirque du Soleil prof teachers that were there if they would take a group of athletes and I could measure some mental skills that it could be like helping. And we
Mm-mm-mm.
did that, and that was just the beginning. And yeah, now I've been doing this since what, 2011, and we're almost 15 years later now and still exploring this topic. So it's a bit crazy to say this, but anyway.
It sort of
So
feels
that's
like something that would be never ending, and I just love that kind of the train of thought there that I picked up on was particularly kind of that rigidity, I guess, is the word of and I 'cause so I was a sprinter when I was younger, and I trained, where I went to the sports institute and trained, and it was always like very serious, and and really, if we're going to translate this to talking about leadership, it's the same, isn't it? Like, how often do you actually have fun,
hmm,
or kind of allow for creativity? And I talked about this with John as well. This kind of need to switch into explore mode as leaders. So we're constantly in exploit mode, but we never switch into explore mode. And this kind of creativity play is so uncomfortable, I think, for so many people, right? Like,
yeah,
it
sorry, I'm
just
I'm
like,
laughing because there's so many images of discomfort or people that were uncomfortable that appear in my mind. So a few late years after my PhD, we started to do this approach program. I hate calling this a program, but
mm,
coaching with and for creativity, which I called that way now. It was not called that way then. And we were bringing leaders to Las Vegas,
yeah,
to one of the Cirque du Soleil theater, And we were like, just the fact. So we were asking them to come dressed up like in sport gear. And
Yep.
just this was uncomfortable just to start with. Like, why? What are we about to do? We go in Cirque du Soleil theater. Will we do this trapeze? Like, okay, like, no, we won't do the trapeze. But actually, what we will do might be a bit worse than doing trapeze. And I started inspired from so many different things. I started doing these movement improv activity where we actually take creativity related skills and we
Mm.
transform them or we embody them in movement. So a lot of fun. mm, Participant might not say a lot of fun at the start. At the start, it's probably a lot of discomfort because just telling them that today we are going to move freely in
Mm.
different activity, just this is already like, I don't think I can do this.
Mm.
But like everything in life, there's a little bit of discomfort at the beginning. Your
Yes.
system is a little bit destabilized. But
Yep.
if you, and this is the exploration bit, right? If you're
Yep.
just a bit curious and you
Mm.
allow yourself to go there, your system will find a way. It will reorganize. And this is where the beauty happen. At the beginning, everyone is a bit frozen and literally you
Mm.
can see it. And that's why probably I laughed a little bit when you said the word discomfort because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, these
So
I've already
uncomfortable.
seen so many of these leaders at the beginning. You're like, oh, okay, I'm not sure we're getting there, but it's always the same. There's
Mm.
one person in the group. Often it start with a leader or like
Yes.
an early adopter, I like to call
Yes.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So one person will explore a little bit more, will do something a bit more crazy, will do something a little funny, and
Mm.
then it gives the permission. So
Mm.
then, because one person does something a little bit outside of the norm, a second person decides to go somewhere else. And then we are expanding. And this is where, like, the process of exploring and expanding possibilities. And this is where you see, like, the reorganization of the system happen. Some
Yeah.
people will reorganize socially, so they will bound together. So
Yes.
people will, like, find their body, at
Yeah.
least that they can kind of go through this together. Some people will close their eyes just not to see other people because they're like, I need to just focus on myself to do this.
Yes.
Some people will take the lead and decide to always be the pusher, like, or I should say the puller.
Yep.
The
Yep.
people that are, everyone have their way, but
Mm.
more we go through the activities,
Yes.
more people realize things about themselves,
Yep.
but also things about themselves in relationship with others and with these processes of exploring. So anyway, that's just a little
And this is well, this is, I think, physical literacy theory, isn't it? Like actually getting them. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. You're the expert here, but like this whole idea of them becoming more competent in the moves, and through that process, they let their barrier down. So there's kind of lowered social barriers, creates communitas, doesn't it? Where people actually connect on a different level, and that's kind of, this is me drawing the link here to, okay, so what can we, what's the actual benefit to it? But
hmm.
that's the kind of the thing that happens in a group, isn't it, when that happens?
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting that you said competency because competency is probably the last thing that is important. Confidence may
Yeah,
be a
right.
little bit more important in this. Like,
Got it.
I just want to them, we use movement,
Yep.
but the proficiency of movement doesn't matter at all. So, like, we
Mm.
start with a walking activity. Like, I mean,
Is
eh,
this the one where you tell people to walk with no bones?
well, it's with substance. And now I'm trying to get a little bit more inclusive in my language as well. And we say moving with substance. So
Got it.
whatever movement doesn't have to be walking, it can be
Got it.
anything. But
Got it.
then we start walking. So the concept is that we have pattern of behaviors, and in leadership, it's often very, very well anchored.
Mm.
There's a way that you've learned how to lead, a way that you've learned how to communicate, and then you anchor these pattern quite deeply. And
Yep.
that's, and there's a reason we do this. Like, look, human, try
Mm.
to be effective. And to
Mm.
be effective, we need to have pattern. Like imagine if every single time we were waking up in the morning, you had to really like think about how to brush your teeth. Like it would be too long, you know? We need to
Mm.
automatize things, but
Okay.
sometimes I feel we automatize a little bit too much. So at some point we become just so robotic in how we
Yes.
go about life,
Right.
and we need to shake these patterns. So to represent this in movement, I take one of the most anchored pattern that we have. And for most of us, not all of us, it's walking. We walk
Yep.
every day and we don't think about how we walk. So then I'm like, hey, we will challenge the way we move from point A to point B. Um, by just exploring what would it look like if your body was made of, and then I go with water, if your body was made of sand, of ice, of mud, of whatever. To be honest, if you one day, if you come to this session, you will see I go with my improv imagination, whatever come to my
Cool.
mind at the moment.
Yeah, cool.
um but then the first, usually I start with something like water or ice, or and the immediate look that I get from most of the participant is like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what, and I'm like, that's the exact point. Is
Yes.
that I don't know either. I have
Mm.
no clue what it would be because it's not what it is. But
Mm.
let's challenge ourselves to explore this. Let's
Mm.
say this assumption would be real, that your body is completely composed of water. I know we are composed of a lot of water, but like if everything, so now your bone become water, your like ligament, your muscle, everything. So what is it? Some people literally drop to the floor. I'm like, sure, why not? Other will do more the wavy movement, you know, more
Mm.
the some people would take water as more the functionality of water. Some take it for the look of water. Some would literally take it as the substance. It's fine. And then we explore, and then we move from the lesson into this is how hard was it to explore movement with these different substances? And most of the
Mm.
time, people are like, I didn't know how to do it. It was
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so imagine if this in a very non-performative moment was difficult. Imagine how it's going to be difficult to change the way you communicate if the way you communicate has an effectiveness to it. Like it's probably going to be very difficult. So then we move on and see like how can we use strategy when we catch ourselves going back to our pattern? How can we
Mm.
allowing some space and time to explore different ways? When is it appropriate? In what situation? With who? Yeah. So,
It's such a rich way, isn't it, to kind of open people's awareness to what they do. I guess patterns is the right word, isn't it? Which patterns they kind of adhere to on a daily basis. And I think um, I've been doing a lot of exploration of my patterns recently in therapy, right? And it's, I mean, the things we do just because it's what we've always done is, I mean, as
mm,
you say, when we're automizing, is that the word you used? Um,
automatize, like when things are
autom
just so learned that you do it without even thinking, really. Like it's just,
This
yeah.
is why I love talking to you because you've just taught me a new word, and I'm into that. You know, I love
Maybe
expanding
it's
my
because
vocabulary.
maybe it's not a word. I don't know. I think it's an English word. Like
Look, let's
automatic
use it.
behavior.
Yeah,
Automatic.
automatic behavior, right? 100% right,
Yeah.
because our brain does that if we think about every single thing every day, we're going to be we're going to be very tired by the end of the day, right? But if we can if we apply that to everything, we have zero creativity in our role in our life, right? And I think that's the point of this for me is like, okay, so if people are if and leaders, I think in general, if they've got this kind of viewpoint of I just have to go and do my thing and get and what I see a lot is jobs become tasks or task lists, right? Look, I'll be honest with you, my life is a task list at the moment, because we're so busy, and it's like that's amazing, but like. So I'm busy at the moment trying to like kind of pull myself out of this so that I can let others who like, want to do the work, and I
Mm,
can be creative because I'm at my best when I'm creative.
mm.
And for me, that means researching, studying, that kind of thing. But I really relate to this kind of, okay, I've got to get through X, Y, Z, or it's not a successful day. But in reality, if we don't have any of this kind of space or create any of this space, um, as leaders for our people and ourselves to create, and then in that it's not just okay, cool, let's create. It's think we need to do something different, don't we, to get the brain thinking in a different way.
And I'm happy that you're saying this because while you were talking, it's like, oh, maybe one of the most traditional pattern, like the way you run a meeting. You know,
Yeah.
the meetings start with like an agenda and then people go through this like, and again, it's for effectiveness. And please, I hope no one, I do think pattern are useful maybe
Yeah.
80% of the time, we need that. Like we both
Yep.
said, we need this to be effective. Yet, and I will give a very good example here at our school. Our head of school, John, that you've talked to just before or a few weeks ago, wanted to do a blue sky meeting where he really wanted the academic at the school to think of different ways we could do the research, the teaching, the service, all the thing academic are doing and like starting to think, but like you cannot start a meeting and be like so kind of patternistic. This I'm really not sure it's a word, but that I may have just created it. And then think that people suddenly will be creative, and you sit them in the same
Mm,
chair at the
yeah.
same place in the same boring meeting, like kind of. So I was quite happy actually. John came to me and he was like, "Look, I want to do this thing. Can we start by a movement activity to help them understand the kind of mindset that I want
Yeah.
for the rest of the meeting?" So
Mm,
it's like, yeah, sure, explain me a little bit what this is about, which he did. And then we started the meeting. He just introduced the whole thing in 2, 3 minutes. And then he was like, Vero. And then I could feel, because some of my colleague knows a little bit what I'm doing, feel in the faces. I was like, oh my God. And actually, I have tennis balls. So I brought the tennis ball in the meeting and I gave like we are all sitting around tables. There's maybe like, I don't know, 7 table in the room. And each table had one tennis ball. And I'm like, very simple. You guys, you just play throw and catch. Everyone has played that in their life. Great. You play throw and catch, very normal. I just want you to pass the ball to each other. Great. First step. Now I'm like, okay, now you cannot repeat the same type of throw like at all. So if you throw a certain way, next time it's going to be your turn to throw. You need to find another way to throw the ball. Ooh, this started becoming a bit more challenging. Balls were dropping everywhere. Like, okay, now the laughing and then freezing moments started to happen. People lacking ideas. I don't know what to do anymore. Anyway, so then I'm like, okay, this ball, this tennis ball that we have, although we tried to be creative with it by exploring different way to pass it, there's still such a constraint that the ball is giving us. First, a social cultural constraint that you need to throw it with your hand because it's
yeah.
like kind of fitting well with this. The ball has a weight. The ball has a consequence. Like if you throw too hard, it's gonna fall on the floor. So what if now we remove the ball and we play with imaginary ball? So now the ball can be any size you want, any weight you want, but here's the twist. You will have to throw the ball in different way every single time, but the person you throw the ball to need to be very attentive because you need to receive the ball with the weight and the speed that you've been thrown the ball to. So if I'm playing with you and I pretend I throw at it, throw the ball at you very fast with a lot, like a big weighted ball, you need to catch it in a way that will make me feel that you were with me in that little improv, you know? And then
Interesting.
we do this, we do this. Anyway, everyone laughed because now possibilities are and there's no more consequences. The ball
Mhm.
doesn't fall on the floor anymore. They can use their feet, their butt, anything, their head. Everything is possible. And it
Awesome.
explode, of course, because when you remove the constraint and it's now imagine, it got
Mm,
really, really, really interesting how kind of ideas. And funny enough, so of course, 10 minutes, it's just a little 10 minutes to start your meeting with, especially if in the meeting
mm,
you want people to be creative or you want them to solve problem and bring new kind of ideas to the table. I don't see how this can start with a meeting agenda and a very dry
yeah.
and like you need to bring the fun, you need to bring the game, the play, and then people connected. Funny enough, there's a prof in the school that emailed me after and he's like, if John would have said beforehand that we
Yeah.
would have started with this, sorry, I would have not come to the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had this very discussion with another lecturer actually, because they sometimes bring singing
Mm, nice.
into their lectures, into so he's a team coach as well. They bring it into team coaching, and so this is where I got really interested in this because I wrote my dissertation on how we can bring more play into team coaching to create. Did
Yeah,
we talk about that? I talked with Dean
I
Kralaz,
don't think.
which was hilarious. But yeah, we. The whole idea was yeah bringing singing in, and if he told people, people didn't come.
Oh,
Like they
I
were
look.
freaking out. So
The
yeah,
positive thing though is that the prof told me, but I would have regretted it
yeah,
because first,
100%.
it's not that bad. Like, my God, you're maybe uncomfortable 5 seconds, really.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And it was a lot of fun. And I
Mm,
think it really got us in a different mood. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
so from one of the, what I call them resistor,
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, love that.
suddenly, which one of my colleagues tells me all the time, I should call them protectors because
Mm,
if you resist, you're protecting something. You're
mm,
protecting the status quo. You're probably protecting something inside of you,
yeah,
which I kind of liked the protector maybe more than the resistor. But yeah, look, if you would have not show up to this, you would have
mm,
always thought that. But in the end, you saw the impact, and it's 10 minutes. It's not that long. Yes, it requires a little bit of creativity from the facilitator, and I always try to connect the game or the
yeah,
movement activity to the purpose of the meeting. So now
yeah,
it was blue sky thinking. We needed to
mm,
imagine without constraint. The ball was a constraint. And then the way John picked it up is like, okay, now we need to remove our school balls in the sense that it's easy to always put the constraint first. Oh, but we don't have the money for that. Oh, but we don't have the time. Oh, but we don't have enough people, or we don't. Okay, if we put the constraint before the ideas,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course, we'll never create. So we need to just let go of the constraint for the first step. Constraint will
mm,
come into play a bit later on in the creative
totally.
process or
Yeah,
innovative process, but not at the start. Allow this exploration at the start, allow the fun and a little bit crazy. Like, I like when ideas are impossible at the beginning because there's always something out
mm.
of these exploration that might be usable.
Yeah, I love that linking of the kind of purpose of the meeting to the activity as well. And so when we do psychological safety, when we bring that into our it's kind of the core of our offering is creating psychological safety in teams.
Mhm.
So we will often kick off just by going around and saying what's something challenging happening in your life right now, and
Mhm.
and so people immediately, and if we get you get your leader, so I usually prime a leader to go deep, and
Mhm.
when they go deep, then it sets the tone really well for what kind of ensues from there. But something else is in my mind about I saw a string quartet actually at Oxford when we were there, and they were it was about I guess bringing kind of creativity and using different ways to get your brain thinking differently, right? And so these guys were playing, and you sort of watched them, and they were all watching for visual cues, and then they turned around, and so they played, not watching, and it was significantly better because they had to really listen and use different to the norm, as to because they can kind of watch, pick up what's going on. Okay, you're about to play this note, got it. And then it was this kind of, it made it really beautiful because they had to listen so deeply. And it's amazing, isn't it? Just to kind of set it up and go, okay, so the purpose of this is this. What else can we try? How else can we look at this? And what might be an interesting way to kind of bring in some creativity to what it is we need to get out of this, right?
Look, yeah, it's super, and I think John actually talked to me about this thing, so I
Yeah.
think it was quite meaningful for him as well.
Mm,
We have all our senses, and we rely a lot on
mm,
um, like what we hear, and what we
yeah.
see. Those are two like very important senses. Like just listening to you, I'm like, oh, what would it be if for 5 minutes in a meeting we all closes our eyes?
Yeah.
How would that transform a meeting? And
Mm,
in my case, that's why I use movement,
yeah.
because with leaders, I don't want them to speak. I want them to explore another way to communicate. And
Yeah.
let's be honest, leaders can't speak. Often it's one of a bit more extroverted people, people that are a bit outgoing, they like to speak, blah, blah, blah. So in the movement activity, there is never any speaking. It's
Love it.
always based on movement. It's never,
Mm,
never. And
mm,
then it open up other senses
mm,
because now, oh, okay, you need to watch how others move and interpret what this is. And then you need this. Sometimes I put music, sometimes we create the music. You
mm,
need to listen very carefully because now it's going to be like, okay, how is this person, like the rhythm of a person impact my rhythm? So I need to be
mm.
very attentive. And I feel even going back to meetings or the presence
Yep.
that it creates when you remove the main senses you usually rely or the main mode, like verbal communication, for instance. If you remove this,
Yeah.
whew, suddenly it becomes a whole different story. And what I love
Mm,
is that other people will be good. Like,
mm,
verbal, again, the people that have very good verbal skill
mm.
will often tend to use their skills, which is completely fine, but
Yeah.
then they might not be as good as expressing themselves through movement. But
Mm.
the shy person that never speaks, maybe this person will be a very good mover and will actually find a very comfortable way of expressing themselves through movement. And then when we do music, you always find your like, I don't know, it's never the leader of the group that will have like music skill. And you're like, oh, suddenly we rely on someone else. I just did that with Swimming Australia a few weeks ago, and there's this like staff member that was a bit like, and we did team band, so we play music together anyway. We
Yep.
like with body beat anyway. And he uses voice, and it's really rare that people would use like sound, not like
Mm,
voice speaking, but like, and everyone, like you could feel that it's like, oh my God, he's usually the a bit isolated kind of person, and then he went on with it, and you just discover other side of people, personalities, and when you
mm,
change the mode of communication, it again, exploration, expansion, it open up to different skills.
mm. I love that. It's yeah, giving a different voice to somebody who doesn't use just their voice, isn't it? Essentially, and I love that. That's such a powerful kind of thought and train of thought and lesson, really, isn't it? Because we spend so much time putting we give so much credit to those that have a loud voice, right? And that's something that is interesting for me over the last few years is that how much quieter I've become and really realize that
Mm,
actually I'm not extroverted. And so it's nice to kind of hang back and watch. But then,
mm,
like, you kind of get the people who just that's all they do is they talk and they're extroverted and they kind of dominate rooms. So changing that pattern and getting those people who operate in different modes is powerful, isn't it? And I'm wondering as well, like, I mean, you're French Canadian. I'm from the bottom of the planet. What have you noticed? Which, look, that's just a perspective, isn't it? So, it might be the top of the planet.
yeah, exactly, true.
Um, the what culturally have you seen in
Mm.
the different cultures you've seen and worked across? Like, what are some kind of interesting things that other cultures have brought in for you that you hadn't thought of before?
Yeah, it's always interesting this question because I'm trying not to be too like stereotypical in like, oh, of course, for instance, in Spain or the more Latin vibe country,
Yeah,
movement, creativity, and
yeah,
expression through movement
mm,
is a little bit more promoted than in Anglo-Saxon country. So, like for
agreed.
instance, one of my great colleague, Carlota Torrens, um, in a physical education undergrad, they have a mandatory creative dance class, a full on all semester for, let's be honest, students that want to become strength and conditioning people for football.
PE
And
teachers.
now they have to do this. And it's amazing
Love
what
that.
she does. And I'm like, we, I mean, I wish we would have a course like this here and we would put
Yeah.
like younger adults
Mm,
through movement activity and creative movement activity earlier. We don't, and same in Canada. I think like we have a little bit of more this English culture. French Canadian is a bit different. Of course, we always like to
yeah.
think that it's a bit different, but hey, some people might disagree with
You're
that.
almost
I
your own
don't
country over there, right?
know. Well, let's not get into this. It's this comes with too much political
Yeah,
weight
yeah,
or
yeah.
load. Let's not get into this. We had fun so far. So,
Cool, cool.
yeah. So, of course, for me, multiple culture taught me so many different things. I remember doing movement improvisation with
Mm,
African coaches, and it was like for them, it was not even a challenge. They were like,
yeah,
we
yeah,
live like this.
yeah,
Like, put music on. We love it. This is our, like, it's actually our happy place
yeah.
to dance, improvise, just groove freely. Like, there was like just happiness all over. So yeah, I try to refrain from being like, oh, this culture this and this culture that, because
Right, okay.
yes, there's a few trends here and there, but I think I've traveled the world. I've through Cirque du Soleil and through the National Circus School, I've met with so many different brilliant people that come from like literally. I've learned as much from a Russian clown that I like, wow, was so beautiful. Than from a South American acrobat that just saw life differently from a African stilt guy. Like, it's I've learned, yeah, I was lucky. I was really lucky, which
Cool.
brings me to another very important thing that I always suggest when people are like, oh, how am I getting more creative, or expose yourself to
Yeah.
what you think would be the most opposite to where you're coming from. So like
Mm,
I spent time in Israel. I've spent time like
mm,
a little bit like, and you're like, just go out there and explore. And if you come from a very serious
yeah.
business, go in the art in the country that you think is the furthest from where you're like, I know it's hard to assess sometimes, but
Mm,
if you're a business Englishman,
yes.
go anywhere in South America that do art, I'm pretty sure you'll be challenged. Like,
Yeah,
it's gonna be a
100%.
very different way of operating there. And I am of the philosophy that everything has, you can learn from everything.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
every philosophy, if you're curious and a bit open,
Mm,
to be honest, you can learn from all of them. And yes, it might be uncomfortable and you might have to wrap your head around how is it even working, this whole thing,
yeah,
but it does. Like,
yeah.
again, we come from countries that are quite organized, and then you end up
Mm,
in places where it's like a bit chaotic, and you're
yeah.
like, how are they even in? And they are. So, I mean, maybe
And
organization is not the only way to go about things.
definitely. And there's some kind of there is some beautiful chaos in those countries, isn't there? I mean, I always, as soon as you said that, I thought of like Southeast Asia
Mm,
and Vietnam in particular, Thailand, and the amount of tuk-tuks and Vespas and bikes on the road, and it just works. it all just kind of, they don't hit each other. And I remember when I was there and I had to cross the road, and you're just like, I'm gonna die. Like you're literally looking at the road going, I'm gonna die. But you don't, and you just walk. You just have to walk with confidence, and they all swerve you, and they just carry on with their lives. They don't slow down. They just carry on with their lives, and it works. And it's just, you're absolutely right. It's what you're essentially talking about there is exposing yourself to different ways of thinking, isn't it? And so and that's something I'm very grateful for as well. And that, like, I've traveled so much that, like, I'm very, I don't always get it right, but like I'm quite good at when there's a new perspective, I'm like, I haven't thought of it that way. Now, rather than like, that's wrong. So yeah, I think that's such a rich piece of advice. And I want to, we could sit here and do this for hours, but I'd love to kind of get your, this is it's such a cliche way to end a podcast, isn't it? But what would be the things that you say to leaders to bring in to help them get some more creativity? Give us the top three or whatever you feel like doing.
Well, one of those I just talk about. So expose your, so
Yep.
if like I will, okay, I work in sport and performing art. If a coach come to me, a sport coach, and he's like, "Oh, what should I do as a professional development?" I'm like, "Don't go into sport. Go
Yeah.
anywhere else, but
Yep.
not your domain." Even if you would go see, because like you know how these things are done, like I'm gonna go visit the other sport that is the most similar to me, and I'm like, "Don't do that. Go do something that is complete, like go see a chef cooking." Right? That might be something more interesting, or that you might bring some inspiration then instead of going to a sport that is quite similar to yours. So expose yourself to something very, very different.
Yep.
I would say, like, ask yourself why some things are making you so uncomfortable. So, like,
Mm,
for instance, when they come and like, why moving freely is so uncomfortable to you? What is
right.
behind that? It's not the moving freely, really. Like, it's because it's
Mm,
very safe. It's nothing dangerous, really. It should not make you feel all these like anxious emotion, really, but it
yep.
does.
Yep.
Why is that? And then depending on your answer, which I mean, everyone would have a different answer, I suppose.
Yep.
Try to find a way to progressively bring a little bit more of this in your life. Like,
Mm,
so if it was the judgment of others, well, how can you expose you to more situation where you will be looked at by others and might feel this judgment and slowly become more and more comfortable with
yep.
other people watching you, for
Love
instance?
it.
Okay,
Yep.
then next time it might be a little bit um, more comfortable to do
Got
this.
it. Yep.
So that would be another thing that I really like. And I had another thought when you asked me the question, but now it slipped my mind. It disappeared in my head. What would I suggest um, leader to do? Yeah, the exposure is key, definitely.
Cool. That's okay. I bet you as I ask you the next one, it'll come back. So,
Yeah, maybe.
um, maybe, right? Okay. So, how do people find you and the work you're doing? Where do they go to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, this is probably a very big weakness. I don't really live in this modern era of social medias and publishing every step you do in your life. And also because of the work I do, the safety we want to create around this, we don't film really.
Yeah.
Well, like we film sometimes, but we keep it for ourselves. So yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Of course, if you go to my UQ research, you will see all the things that I've written.
Cool.
My LinkedIn is probably the best place where I do forward the podcast that I do when I do them.
Yep.
But yeah, write me an email. I'm also a little bit slow sometimes in answering, which I think you've experienced a few times.
Actually, no. I think you were all right with me. So yeah, I appreciate
Well,
it.
okay, maybe I'm a bit judgmental on myself for that, but yeah, just shoot me an email or a LinkedIn, and that's pretty much the extent of where you can find me, unfortunately.
Awesome. Well, look,
But
thank
the
you.
best thing you can do is try to come to one of those movement session, and then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can.
Yeah, I love that. Great. Well, listen, thank you so much, Vera. It's been a pleasure, and I think I'm very grateful for you bringing all your knowledge, and I feel like I've had a good kind of lesson myself here. So yeah, I'm always grateful for that. Thank you very much. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Well, maybe after we end this, you just go for a little walk, like if your body was made of water, and see how it feels. And you text me how it feels. What about that?
Yeah, sounds perfect. I'm off right now.
Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Braver Leaders podcast. If this conversation sparks something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a fellow leader who needs to hear it. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode, and check out our free resources as well on braverleaders.com, because great leadership starts with action. We'll see you next time.